Good evening and welcome to the regular school board meeting for Independent School District 833. It is Thursday, March 5th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. and we're in the District Service Center, Cottage Grove, Minnesota. 1.0 is roll call.
Melinda Doles.
Here.
Louise Hines.
Here.
Simi Pitnaik.
Here.
Pat Driscoll.
Present.
Sharon Van Leer.
Present.
Katie Schwartz.
Here.
Tracy Brunette.
Here. 2.0, please rise and join me for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Three 3.0 is the approval of our agenda, and we do have one amendment to add 8.2, a negotiations update to the agenda. So I will entertain a motion with that amendment.
So moved.
It's moved by Sharon, second by Katie. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. 4.0 are district highlights. That will be on our agenda March 26th. Public comment will also be on our agenda March 26th. 6.0 are our consent items. All consent items are considered routine and non-controversial by the school board and will be approved by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items, but prior to the meeting, board members did have the opportunity to review them and could have requested that one be moved to an action item. We don't have that this evening, so I will entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Ooh, wait, who was second? That Melinda. Okay, so moved by Sharon, second by Melinda. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. And I apologize, I'm standing up, but I have a herniated disc, and if I sit down, it hurts. So I'm standing. So anyway, 7.0 is our workshop items, and 7.1 is a strategic plan update, which Superintendent Jacobus will give us.
Thanks. So we're in the middle of the school year, and we're preparing to bring forward our results from this year's priority statements and the action steps we've taken to move our strategic plan forward. And we wanted to, as we've done in past years, come to you and give you an update on our progress thus far in the school year and talk to you about some potential changes we might make in our priorities. One of the things we talked about when we developed this strategic plan is that a good plan needs to be a living document that that we alter as we go into the year if there's needed changes. We've talked this year that in our personalization, actually in both objectives, that we want to make sure that we have steps in there with all the work we're doing, but steps and action steps that students and parents at the end of the school year would say, I know that you have the strategic plan because I see it and feel it, and what are the outcomes that kids see in the classroom and throughout the district. So some of the things that we'll talk about today when you come into, and hopefully you all can make it when we do the update for our community in early June, we'll be talking about some alterations we might want to make going forward and what we changed this year. So tonight we're going to go through each of the objectives and the priorities and give you an update on where we are. And then we'll stop after each objective so you can ask questions. Otherwise, by the time we get through the entire plan, some of the questions may get lost. So sorry that I keep moving around.
It's all right. And I'm going to start. So our first objective, personalization, is focused on engaging, motivating, and empowering students. It encompasses 3 priority statements centered on student voice, defining and delivering personalized instruction, and understanding the impact culture has on learning and teaching. And so for the first priority statement, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jacobus to talk about student voice.
So we're really proud of the work that we've done both in our individual classrooms and then throughout the system to bring students' thinking and their decision-making into our decision-making. So we have a number of advisory committees. Today, Julie was working with our youth advisory, our elementary advisory committee, and they looked at menu items today. They did food tasting. And then their comments have changed our menu. By tomorrow, Wendy Tracy will look at what she heard from kids, and we may have new menu items. So I mean, that's just one example, but our main student voice group this year has been the Superintendent's Advisory that we've had up and running for the last 3 years. They have actually moved things into our strategic plan. And then this year with the student voice, what their plan was, the action step was to plan and implement a student-led conference. So the students talked about what did they feel were important items that they wanted to learn more about, that they wanted to gather information, and that were on their minds that they might move into the strategic plan to enhance personalization. So the summit took place this year. We focused on the topics that you see. School safety was large on their, or a main thing on their mind. Mental health, career and college readiness, cultural awareness, and vape and e-cigarettes. I think it's always interesting for people to see student thinking. It would be very close to our thinking as a staff if we looked at issues that we are constantly looking for ways to get better at and address. So they developed these agenda items last spring. They worked on presenting and developing a presentation. We set the conference up to be like a professional conference. We had a keynote speaker. We had an MC that worked through, and there were breakout sessions. And then the students presented twice through the breakout sessions. And the goal was to bring 3 to 5 statements from this student conference that we would put into the strategic plan to move forward for next year. So we had this on President's Day. It was a day off of school. The reason we scheduled it then, because we could use a high school and spread out and use all the classrooms. We were hoping to have 150 kids. We knew that date might be a little difficult because kids could be traveling. It's a day off of school. It's hard to schedule at night, though, because so many kids have activities. And so at night is kind of a difficult one. During the day, if we did it as a field trip, we wanted to make sure that students came who really were interested in being at the conference. But we're going to have to reevaluate that because we didn't reach our goal and it wasn't as well attended. But we received some great feedback. The next time we meet, we'll go through those statements, and between now and when we present to the large group, we'll have refined a couple action steps or priority steps that we would present to the group and talk to them about potentially moving them forward for next year.
I'm just going to add, I had a chance to be at part of that conference, and the leadership of the students was impressive. That they would be great role models for adults. And I know they had mentors. I don't know who the mentors were throughout the district, but just a pat on the back for whoever those people were too. It was phenomenal.
And I will say that this whole group in the conference and moving these students forward, Students' Voice, really are, the thanks goes and all the work goes to Leah Bulios, Ashley Ruka, Jonathan Hunt, and Kelly Isaacson. The 4 of them have planned each meeting. I'm fortunate to work with them because we talk about what we want to do, and they've already come up with avid strategies to engage the kids or check in and really move them forward. So this is something we hope to continue every year and enhance this as we go through with not only more kids, but more ways to gather student voice. So any questions before we go on there? Thanks for those comments. The kids are unbelievable.
All right. The second priority statement encompasses quite a few action steps because it entails feedback from stakeholder groups to define, design, and implement personalization throughout our system at every level. So no small tasks. So there's quite a few things I'm going to speak about here. There's 5 on this slide and 3 on the next slide, and so I'll pause after these 5 if there's any questions on those. The first bullet, transforming personalized learning into an actionable design, began with a steering committee of administrators that attended the Personalized Learning Academy with our partners at Metro EXU. And through this process, we began planning the roadmap for personalization, utilizing their system and what pillars define personalization. And after evaluating all of those pillars, we have started the process to create our profile of a graduate. And so we are meeting with some stakeholder groups now through the next couple of weeks, and you will be a part of that actually next month as well. And with the product of a profile of a graduate, what is it we want students who graduate from South Washington County Schools to have and possess? So we'll have more on that in the next month. The second bullet refers to moving the conversations on evaluating student learning through a standards-based lens into our middle schools. You've probably heard we've done a lot of work with standards-based and standards-based reporting at our elementaries, And now what does that mean for our secondary schools? Unfortunately, we were relying on our Schoology partners to help with the management of this process, and they haven't come through with the developing the product that we need at this point. And so we just found that out last week. So we're starting some conversations about how else we could move in this process. We've kind of been putting it on hold, listening, waiting for Schoology to come up with an easier way for teachers to connect assignments and assessments, formative and summative, with a standard, and Schoology hasn't been able to meet our needs there. So we're going to start to have some conversations about what is a solution that meets our needs in that area. We are still very focused on standards-based instruction and will continue to seek out ways that will impact secondary teaching and learning. The next two bullets address the role technology plays in personalization. The first one addressing access to technology, knowing that engagement is much more than access, but it's a starting point. And the second one, identifying a consistent learning management system. And so I'm going to turn over to Bob Berkowitz, our Director of Technology.
Great, thank you, Kelly. So going into the 1920 school year, we did implement and deploy 3,900 Chromebooks at the high school level. And so we were able to negotiate those down to $208 a piece, which was quite a feat. For the next school year, we actually got that down under $175 for the middle school. That didn't come without its challenges. The rollout went a lot better than we expected. We did run into a few keyboard issues with the model we bought, hence the better price this year. And we never let a good disaster go to waste here. And so we're working with the vendor and with Hewlett-Packard to actually have some of our students do repairs on those devices. And so we'd like to have that be an offering as we move forward. And so we're working out the details. So that's been a great access to devices. We did a lot of devices this year. We did 2,000 devices at the elementary level for iPads. So traditionally, elementary schools have always gotten the hand-me-downs. So we did social studies at middle and high school. Every time we did a refresh, we pushed devices down. What happens is we end up with a lot of really old equipment at the elementary school. This year, we reached a point with Apple where all the Apple iPad devices up to the iPad Air are a 32-bit processor, and all the software is 32-bit software. And the developers are no longer developing for those types of hardware. And so we did a purposeful refresh across all of elementary. It might not have felt like they got a lot of new things. We took 2,000 out, we put 2,000 right back in. Now, again, the exciting part for us is we went to a public auction and sold that equipment, and we were able to generate enough revenue from the sale to do 3 full iMac labs at the high school. And so as we move into next year, the district will buy the Adobe Creative Suite, and we'll be able to teach with the newest software in those with very nice hardware. And so that was kind of the benefit of the residual value of that equipment. This Seesaw and Schoology. So this is our fourth full year using Seesaw. It's the third year that Seesaw has been part of our strategic plan. And we've presented on Seesaw before, and we'll likely do it again. But really, it's a capture tool that gives parents a window directly into the classroom. And so the use of the iPad is brilliant because it's very easy to just snap a picture, capture authentic evidence of learning that are attached to a standard and a rubric of ICANN for a student. So it shows the parents what it is the student's trying to learn, and it also shows that evidence right to the parent in real time when the teacher uploads it. So we're really excited about Seesaw. The Schoology, this is our second full year of implementation with Schoology at the high school and middle school level. We did do a year pilot before this. As Kelly said, the act of grading standards-based is very, very difficult. The act of teaching is an art, and how do you grab a state standard and attach it to an assignment and gather all of that information up and understand where every kid is on every standard all the time? And the answer is a tool like Schoology or Seesaw, where all of that hard work is done behind the scenes, where we've already linked learning to what objectives and what success looks like for the student. The problem we have with Schoology at this point is Schoology was acquired by another company, and they've changed their strategic roadmap of development. And so we really, really need the linking of standards to learning, and we were very firm with them last week, and it's a non-negotiable for us. And so we will continue Schoology, but we are very concerned about the development of that. That is something that we absolutely need. So, questions?
All right, go ahead.
Are you moving to the next slide?
I was going to finish this last bullet and then we'll. The last bullet describes the structure we're working on to put in place that supports the goal of excellent instruction every day in every classroom. We model our instructional coaching after a lot of Jim Knight's work, and that's actually his goal for his coaching cycles. We've been able to evolve the Student Achievement Specialists, or SASs, you've heard them called. They are teachers on special assignment through the HPPS levy, and the addition of those FTEs, we've been able to include a lot of professional development time and support for instructional coaching in our schools. We have 8 elementary and 7 secondary SASs who support implementation of initiatives. So they're helping with any implementation of, for example, the elementary math, things like that. They're doing some of that. They're also helping with testing, and they're also being able to add instructional coaching to their plate. They also, and we recently had our individual check-in meetings with each of the SASs, and they are doing amazing work in our schools. It was so wonderful to sit down and have those conversations with them about what they've done this year and ways that we can improve their supporting them, and just the amount of professional conversations that are happening between our teachers is impressive, and it was really fun to hear about them. So that is it for these 5. Before I turn it over to finish the personalization, any questions on these?
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about how personalized learning is alike or different from individualized education?
You mean like an IEP?
Well, just that distinction. Is personalized learning, is that an individualized, or is it different than individualized?
I definitely could see some similarities. I would say in defining personalized learning, it's about getting to know the kids, making it relevant, making it exciting for them, it's personal for them. That's also the goal behind making standards, the backbone of it. So kids are motivated to learn that, so it becomes personal. It's a personal learning experience versus that individual planning, which involves specific strategic goals and SMART goals and things like that for students to reach. And goal setting certainly part of it, but personalization is a little bit more global, I would say, than individual.
Thank you.
Any other questions on these? I know it's a lot.
I would say just comment on Bob's work with technology. In a few years, I think they're going to be paying us to put technology in. He does a phenomenal job, but also what he's done is really listen to teachers and understand how do we leverage. So I think that's excellent work. The other thing I was remiss when I talked about the student-led conference, Bob and Community Ed did all the registration and all of the brochures and the work behind the scenes for that, and I missed, and so I apologize for that. But
Hey, Kelly.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question to kind of piggyback off of Louisa's personalization question? So the personalized learning is done typically like at a classroom level, or is it ever done at a school level to differentiate different schools? Because a lot of our schools are different, to differentiate like the curriculum or programming that's offered within buildings.
I mean, there certainly is personalization happening. Schools getting their own identity. They have certain programs. I think it lends to personalization and climate and culture, depending upon what kind of programming you're talking about. But it certainly could happen at that school level with personalization. We're seeing a little bit of that in the social emotional learning. A lot of our schools are doing some of their own pathways with personalization as it relates to social emotional curriculum and things like that. So it happens at every level. You're 100% correct. All right, the last 3 bullets for the priority statement 2 focus on enhancing our EL or English learner experience, non-traditional opportunities for students, and then connecting extended and early learning to K-12 programming. So a piece of enhancing our learners' experience is that we are celebrating students who identified a home language other than English and are offering an opportunity to take the STAMP test that leads to a seal of biliteracy for those students. Traditionally, this has only been offered to our immersion students, and so now we have extended it to anyone who's identified a language other than English and anyone that the STAMP offers the test for. And on April 7th, which is ACT testing day, those seniors are going to be given the chance to take that test, which would then officially recognize their biliterate abilities. And so that was very exciting, and our Director of Program Evaluation, Research, and Assessment, John Lindner, has been working on that. And we've also continued to explore non-traditional and personalized learning opportunities. Two examples of this include expanding the number of internships through our Genesis Works. We talked about that last year a little bit. It's a program in which students do a training through the summer and then they enter into an internship with some of our local businesses. And then offering online courses, so a little bit of a non-traditional delivery, and those online courses will start this fall for our students. And the last bullet in priority statement 2, I'm going to turn over to Bob Lawrence, our Director of Community Ed.
All right, thank you. I've been holding my breath for 25 minutes trying not to cough, but I have not been out of the country. I won't touch my face, and I will cough into my sleeve if necessary. So, thank you. Yes, one of the priority for community education, I'm going to talk tonight about our work in expanding opportunities for enrichment and learning outside of the school day, so outside of that traditional day. So that includes our out-of-school time, which is before and after school, summer, non-school days. And it was when Kelly was talking about personalization and really what that means compared to individualization, and it's really about those experiences. And that's something that community education, I feel like we have a unique opportunity because our structure is a little bit differently, so we can offer experiences. But what we've worked over the last few years through this strategic plan goal is to really align some of the programs and resources within community ed, and this year it's really been more focused on making connections with both the teaching and learning service program or department and also individual schools. So one of the areas that we have been making that alignment over the last few years is with our targeted services. We have a position within community ed, our extended learning coordinator, who meets regularly with Kelly and her team and plans the targeted services, the academic portion for summer and out of school time. And it's really important that she works closely with Kelly's team to ensure that what we're offering meets the academic needs of our students. But what we've done this year to expand that is really worked to one of the areas is with our youth development plan. And so we have a youth development plan within community ed. We have a youth development coordinator who has traditionally worked to provide leadership and service opportunities for students, and we're continuing to do that. But what we've done differently this year is realign some of our resources, and that position has been working more closely with TLS and the College and Career Readiness Coordinator to develop career exploration and professional-based learning opportunities. So what we see as our role as community education is to understand the community, find out what some of those resources in the community are, work with the CCR coordinator position who understands the needs within the schools and make a connection within those, and also put together some specific systems in place to ensure that we can connect those needs with those resources. Another way that we've worked to expand our out-of-school time alignment with K-12 is we've looked at every elementary school's school improvement plan, their SIP plan, to identify areas that are larger that we can enhance or align with what they're doing. Our Kids Club is our largest program, but it also, out-of-school time would include any recreation or enrichment opportunities that we offer. Two areas that from looking at school improvement plans this year that I can give you examples where we have been able to support efforts within the schools to provide personalization and support for personalization is one was conscious discipline. Kelly mentioned social emotional learning strategies. Kids Club, which is our school age care program, has spent the last 2 years providing training and resources to the staff for conscious discipline to meet the social emotional needs of the kids in our program. And as we saw in the school improvement plans, schools who were using those strategies, we met with those schools to talk about what does it look like in that specific school and how can we encourage and work with our staff to ensure that the ways that those needs are being met for students are cohesive between in-school and out-of-school time. Another area with social emotional learning is we learned that there's a second step curriculum that's being used by some of our schools, and when we learned what that was, we did a little bit more exploration, realized that there is an out-of-school time component for second step, and that's coming out here in the year 2012 or 2020, and so we are looking at how we can implement those strategies at those schools where that's being done. So that's an area that a couple of examples, and then also just continuing to look more specifically on when we how we meet the needs within the opportunity gap related to enrichment. We know that a lot of community ed programs are fee-based, and so there are some barriers to participation. That could be time, that could be finances, and so we're looking at how can we leverage some of the resources we have to ensure that all students have opportunities for out-of-school time enrichment. An example that's been in place and we're continuing to grow is our schoolie bus. We take that out to neighborhoods where we see lower participation. We take that out in the summer to provide opportunities. But we're looking beyond that as well and looking at specific schools and which schools have programs that go and don't go and why and what are those reasons and how can we work with the staff at the schools to offer some of those enrichment opportunities, because as Kelly said, we're talking about experiences, and we're talking about experiences that engage students, that make them excited to come and follow their passions and pursue their passions. So those are some examples, and I apologize, like I said, I'm a little foggy in my head, so if you have questions, I can certainly answer them or follow up with you.
Hey, Bob?
Yeah.
Is it on?
Yes.
Okay. I had a question. So you had mentioned that there's an opportunity gap for the enrichment among schools. So if you're looking at 2 different schools in our district, how big is the gap? What does the gap actually look like?
Yeah, what the gap looks like, the best example we can look at is if we just look at it's like we talk about a go, no-go rate in community ed because it is fee-based. If we don't get enough kids to sign up, then we can't offer a class or a recreation program or whatever that might be. And so an example of what we've been trying to do is we'll look at some of those sites and say, okay, maybe we need 15 kids to make an after-school sports program go, but we can only ever get 5 or 6 kids. Is there a way to work with Kids Club and some of the staffing structures that we have in place to offer it using some of the Kids Club students that are there, some of the community students who the community members who would have signed up otherwise it would have been canceled because there just weren't enough kids, and make that a go instead of a no-go. The other way would be to look at, do we have resources where instead of making a fee-based program, we can place a coach on site and offer a program at a low or no fee instead of at that fee-based model. It might be a shorter session, it might be a little bit different class, but it's instead of offering nothing. So I don't have a specific example of, we have 32 classes that go at elementary school A and 3 that go at B. But there are definitely, when we look out at where our kids are being able to, the number of opportunities they're able to access, there are certainly schools that have much fewer that are go. So then we're trying to figure out what does that look like.
Does every school have at least one thing?
Yeah, oh yeah,
Okay.
yep. And then with the schoolie example, we looked specifically at neighborhoods where we have a lot of students who utilize our fee assistance program, and we made the assumption then that if there are some students who utilize fee assistance, there are others, and so we place our schoolie program in those neighborhoods because that's a free program with lots of opportunity. And we partner with Sawashko Cares to bring food resources and other resources and community resources so that it becomes an event and an activity in the summer where some students in those neighborhoods we feel wouldn't have that camp experience or that summer evening enrichment type experience otherwise. So.
Kelly, can I ask you a question about the stamp testing? How many kids, so they take the stamp test in English?
No.
They take it in their native language?
Yes.
So how many different languages is the stamp test offered in?
17.
And do those 17 languages that are offered the stamp test, do they align with the top 17 non-English languages spoken by our students?
I'm looking at John because he's done most of the
Oh,
research.
sorry, John. I didn't mean to.
So no.
Okay.
They're more aligned with the highest spoken languages in the world. So the difference is largely going to be languages like Hmong, Somali,
Right.
and Karen.
Well, because I'm just thinking so for example, there are tons of Hindi speakers in the world, right?
So yes, that
Right.
would be a language.
But my guess is, if I can stereotype, the majority of Hindi speakers that we have in our district are also fluent English speakers and have been since, let's call it kindergarten, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, yes, I guess they can have a seal of biliteracy, but that's not, but what do we do? But there's not that many Hindi speakers in our district, right, compared to Hmong students or Somali students. So what what do we do for those students, or what can we do for those students that gives them the same access to a seal of biliteracy that, for example, like my children would have?
So we're really dependent on the approved vendors to provide that assessment, because the Minnesota Department of Education approves vendors for the test. And this is more of a market share issue, unfortunately. They're working on developing some of these assessments, and we are pushing MDE in that direction. It's not just those languages, but also the Native American languages are also being developed. I would say in the next year or two, there will be something for more of our students.
Okay. How many students end up, or do you anticipate taking this test?
Students are registering right now, so I want to be a little careful, and they get to choose to do it because it's on their day off, right? We could have up to about 100 students,
Okay.
not including the Spanish immersion students, 100 non-English speaking, or students who have a home language other than English.
Okay. Do they take the STAMP test on the same day?
No.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions on this? All right. In the final priority statement for personalization, we are seeking to include the conversations around equity, culture, and CLRT, or culturally and linguistically responsive teaching, into all of our conversations around teaching and learning, just really trying to break down any silos. It is all good practice, all good for kids, and so trying to break down those silos between achievement integration and teaching and learning, and people thinking they're different initiatives. So through the curriculum review process, we have infused conversations of the impact our own culture has on the way we see the world and the way we teach. A few tools we've used to engage in this process are a little bit of the human-centered design tenets, getting people out there to say, who is it we are really designing our learning experiences for? And then the intercultural development inventory, or the IDI, which gives groups and individuals a sense of where they fall on a continuum of understanding culture or intercultural competence. And IDI defines that as the capability to shift our cultural perspective and appropriately adapt behavior to cultural differences and commonalities. And so the groups that are part of the curriculum review go through these processes, and these experiences have really helped to ground them in common language. And it's given individuals who have debriefed with their IDI a plan to develop their own intercultural competence. The IDI gives an IDP as part of that process, and so people can elect to do an individual debrief. That is it for personalization. Hopefully you feel like you've gotten a glimpse into our efforts, and as Dr. Jacobus mentioned, we'll give you a little bit more in June when we come back. It encompasses a lot within these priority statements, and hopefully you've been able to hear a little bit about them tonight. Any questions before I turn it over? All right, I'm going to turn over to Mike Johnson to talk about climate and culture.
Okay, good evening. With climate and culture for students and staff, I'll start out with the students, and Dr. Witherspoon will take over the staff. A couple years back, we had switched this just because climate and culture was so large for, it was its own at first, but then we felt that we needed to split that up probably 3 years ago. The main definition, we will ensure safe, inclusive environments and encourage diverse perspectives through engagement, innovation, and creativity. Our first priority statement is applying student preference for learning by creating opportunities at the secondary level that involves shared ownership. The first action step we had, basically each secondary school has groups of students who give feedback about this. And at the district level, we have utilized our Youth Advisory Council and Superintendent Advisory. But one of the things that we had learned a couple years ago is we wanted to be real cognizant of identifying students to survey where a school doesn't necessarily work for them. While students in district councils have been identified in the past with our Superintendent Advisory and our YAC groups, we survey kids in AVID and strategies classes at the South Washington Alternative High School as well. They've provided excellent feedback for us. Sometimes we learn more from students where school hasn't always worked for them in the past. And our second action step is to take this information that we've gotten and to share that to principals and TLS to implement ideas for the 2021 school year and beyond. After the surveys are completed, I'll share those results with Kelly Jansen, our secondary principals, and the department to give ideas before our spring 2020 program studies meeting, especially at the high school level. In the past, here's just an example of how this has been successful. Students have mentioned that online and hybrid course offerings would interest them, and Kelly has already shared as part of personalization and their success the addition of those 9 online courses that our district provided. So that's just an opportunity for our kids and a testament to their voice and choice, that what they've said really does matter and we make decisions based on that. So that's the first priority statement. I'll take some questions now. The second and third priority statements are a bit more involved. Okay. Next up, demonstrating and assessing and aligning the use of the culturally responsive teaching strategies across the district. First off, with the first action step, the first bullet point, we're allocating specific time for CLRT training at each staff meeting. This is, I believe, our third year with Dr. Holly, or 3.5 years worth. We're supporting, another example, supporting classrooms and libraries with purchasing materials and curriculum with culturally responsiveness in mind. Another thing would be schools considering cultural elements when addressing behaviors. We discussed this at our AP meetings when we have all elementary, middle, and high school APs, because they truly are in charge of the discipline, so it's always good conversation about it. The following items are asked of principals as well. Given time for CLRT training in each staff meeting, embedding those strategies into all PD and meetings, working with their building leadership teams to lay out a 5-year coaching plan for all teachers to become CLRT trained through the work of those equity teacher leaders that the union had assisted us with and given us permission to do, and those SASs. Kelly mentioned about our SASs. And finally, meeting with their respective assistant superintendents as part of their evaluation process. When Christine and Julie and I meet with our principals, for example, we would observe at least two staff meetings per year where they're part of or they're leading that work in Dr. Holly's work and connecting the work to their classroom practice and their walkthroughs. For example, when I go out with Dr. Jacobus to the various schools, we'll sit and we'll do our walkthroughs and we'll talk with our principal about what we had seen and how that work that's being connected with the CLRT work is transferring over to the classroom. Our second action step would be to continue that district focus of individual schools and teachers receiving that coaching from Dr. Holly and his coaches. Here would be an example of some coaching options with the SAS and or those ETLs, the equity teacher leaders. They'd include co-teaching in the classroom, modeling specific strategies one-on-one with a plan for the teacher to then implement it on their own and then be observed. Or one-on-one support with CLRT lesson planning and or protocol or activity ideas. So those are just a variety of things that those teachers would do. There's also a timeline that's staggered for coaching with our SASs and or ETLs via options I just mentioned over that 5-year plan. The third bullet point, and this is something we've changed. What we did have was we wanted to have one K through 12 walkthrough form that would just fit for everyone in regard to this. And everybody's at a different spot. So in talking with instructional directors, principals, and my small group, it was very obvious that we need to meet our teachers where they are instead of just assuming, oh, they're all going to be at this spot. So anyway, this action step had changed, and this will help us to identify cultural competency learning needs of staff. However, like I said, all of our schools are on different spots in their journeys. It wouldn't be fair to ask teachers at Pullman, where they're one of the 8 schools who just started year 1 of their jump starts, to be held accountable to the same metrics and levels of proficiency at Liberty Ridge, where they were one of the first to start this with Dr. Holly and his coaches. So on a side note, though, in consultation with Gina Spoo, she's one of our 2 district CLRT coaches, sites like Oltman and Pullman, they've bought in really quickly. They're moving along ahead of schedule, according to Gina. She mentioned that Pullman's already doing Binder Study 2 this year, which for most sites would be year 2. So that's a credit to the staff at Pullman. This way, the principals are able to examine the impact of their staff development efforts and report them to the 3 assistant soups and share the successes and difficulties with their peers at principals meetings, all in preparation for the upcoming school year. The last action step for this priority statement is to begin planning an implementation process of teacher evaluation, adding or infusing the CLRT components. And multiple meetings have taken place with select district and school administration, HR, and teacher leadership this fall with discussion about where to place these CLRT components in a formal teacher evaluation. I can take some questions on this one if you'd like. And obviously, we'd be sharing data with you when we have our end of, our end of the year meeting in June, where we bring all sorts of data. So for priority statement number 3, demonstrating the use and impact of positive skills, techniques, and frameworks that enhance relationship building strategies across the district. I'd like to combine the first 2 bullet points. Because the MDE student survey results weren't shared with us until early October, we were unable to meet our strategic planning deadline, and we're going to be implementing these in preparation for this coming year. We're going to utilize these survey questions in off years for our own benefit and use Qualtrics to gain cohort data and results. But we do have school reports that have enabled us to determine the schools with the most positive data, and in turn identifying those action steps on their SIPs, those SIP plans, placing those steps into specific areas in elementary and secondary where the groups can select past proven successful action steps if they're not experiencing the gains that they would have expected. So if my school didn't perform as well, I'd sit down with my team and we'd have lists of elementary, mid, and high where the schools that performed the best, hey, here are our action steps. Go ahead. Here's a little a la carte where we can maybe try that for our plans in the future. An example, at one of our secondary schools, one school was focused on a question from the Minnesota survey, I feel safe at school. So this was an item from a previous SIP, and they'd gained improvement in the past, but they still wanted to continue. But here's some items, like I said, that they could pull. Here were some of their action steps where they were successful. Weekly PD during team meetings, how we see our students and how we see ourselves was kind of the theme. A social justice book club, anti-bullying lessons during advisory or homeroom, and creation of a student leadership team to serve as a focus group. So those would be ones just from one school that people could pick. The next bullet point, instituting student focus groups in addition to the staff and parent survey to gain perspective and deepen representation of strategies and activities. Each secondary school has specific focus groups in which principals and other staff gain perspective, and the assistant superintendents and I discuss these groups during the evaluation process with principals. For example, a staple of our mid-year review is to discuss efforts of personalization in student climate and culture in the school directly. I think Julie had put that, I think you added that this year or last year, where we thought that was an important part, and obviously Keith's aware of that as well. Our next to last action step on this is surveying staff and parents mid-year to gauge the implementation and measure success of involvement of strategies and activities like Keith had alluded to before. We're aware that these things are going on. What are the school's efforts? And this has begun at a variety of schools. We have not done all of them yet, and grade levels throughout the district. And after the surveys are complete, we will be able to examine how well we've informed, implemented, and involved the families in the priority throughout the district in year 4, where we have the same types of questions. So when staff are surveyed and when parents are surveyed, we were looking kind of for a match to make sure that, okay, yeah, there is some consistency here where students and staff do agree, or staff and families do agree on this and these efforts. The final action step is surveying the kids at the end of the year to measure the success of the SIP on select items. And ultimately, that's the most important one. If the kids feel that it's working, and if the kids feel that way, that's fantastic. But we're going to gain that information quickly to leverage the efforts before next year's SIP work begins. We did that activity back in May last year. We did it with the students as well as the large group for strategic planning. Did a Four Corners activity. But anyway, this surveying will occur after MCA testing in the district, and we'll determine the questions in which grade levels to survey this spring after consulting with instructional directors and using John's expertise as well. So I'll take some questions on this one if you have them. Okay. Well, if there aren't any, I'd like to transition to Dr. Witherspoon, where he's going to illustrate the progress for staff, climate, and culture. Thank you.
Hi, so priority statement 1 is that 95% of, and there's a change here, so the original was 95% of all employees. I'd like to change that to,
That's me, sorry.
oh, okay. I'd like to change, I thought it was me for a second and I'm holding it, okay. I'd like to change that to 95% of all frontline employees, and frontline employees include paraprofessionals, maintenance, nutrition services, office professionals. And the reason, it's not that other groups aren't doing the development, there's just a scope and sequence for teachers and systems leaders through teaching and learning services. And so the HR department is taking on the frontline professionals. So in at least one professional development activity regarding cultural awareness, enhancing work climate culture. And so we've had several sessions already. Rick Petrie came back again this year and did a climate and culture professional development. His topics included equity, cultural responsiveness, and a growth mindset. On October 16th, Transportation had their training, and 87% attended in person, and all of the others watched it on video if they weren't able to attend the training. November 5th, our Kids Club met, and 95% attended. And so that's 38 out of 40, so that's pretty good. And then March 3rd, Nutrition Services, to 96% attendance at that professional development opportunity. And then on March 16th, Corey Thompson and James McGee will conduct professional development focusing on equity and mindset. Do you have anything to add, Corey, about that date? No? Okay. And then, it's not on here, but one of the other action steps is 75% of employees participating in an employee engagement survey will report positively. That survey is usually sent in April, so we'll send it again in April. And just as a last year, 83% of those who responded positively. So any questions on priority statement 1? We'll move on to priority statement 2, and that is that District 833, and again, there's a change here too. District 833 will increase the number of, the original was District 833 will increase the number of new hires of color from 15% to 17%, and we'd be looking from June to June. We'd like to change that based on some feedback, to change it to, instead of new hires of color, change it to qualified, diverse, and effective hires. And so I pulled the data to see where we're at currently. And so since June 30th, 2019, and I pulled the data on February 27th, 12% of our hires have been people of color. So 56 employees of the 477 employees we hired from June until February. Just a quick breakdown of those 56, 21 were African American, and mostly in the teacher and substitute realm and coaching and paraprofessional realms. 2 were American Indian, and they were in the Kids Club arena. 19 were Asian in substitute teachers, paraprofessionals, and nutrition service workers. And 14 Hispanic, 6 teachers, and 3 paraprofessionals. So we currently have 72 teachers of color, which is 4.9% of our teachers. When we talk about recruiting efforts, I just wanted to, we currently post for frontline positions at Century College, Inver Hills, River Falls, Minnesota Works, St. Paul Library, St. Paul College, Dakota County Tech, and Neighborhood House, which focuses on diverse candidates. We continue to advertise with Indeed, Jobs in Minneapolis, City of Cottage Grove's website, The Bulletin, La Vaz Latina, in print and delivered free to every home on St. Paul's West Side, which is historically the Twin Cities' most established Hispanic community. The Voice, again, in print and distributed to West St. Paul and downtown St. Paul and South St. Paul. We also have worked with the communications department to update our site on Indeed. So it has, it looks better, it's more eye-catching. We actually have someone now from the Human Resources Department that will answer any questions that someone leaves on Indeed. We've also done targeting ads for, and found much success actually doing targeting ads for certain positions that we need to target to get employees, and we've had some great success actually. We'll continue to attend Washington County Workforce Fair and then sponsored job fair with jobs at Woodbury High School, Jobs HQ at Woodbury High School. We'll go to the Union Job Fair in April, and then We will, of course, do the Education Career Fair at the Minneapolis Convention Center. And this year, I think that is April 1st. And this year, we'll actually have a much larger presence than we have in the past. Before, we've had kind of a small table, and we've now upgraded and have several tables, and we'll bring several principals and assistant superintendents and special education, some other people with us. So there'll be a larger presence there. Nope, sorry, I don't know. So our other one would be recruiting candidates by increasing attendance and presence at out-of-state career fairs. And that was the last time we brought the strategic plan to the community. It was very important that we start those efforts to do out-of-state recruiting. And part of that reason is, I think right now the 3% of teachers in Minnesota are considered people of color, and so with all districts vying for the 3%, we thought we would reach out and recruit other places. So we are planning to attend right now North Carolina A&T in Greensboro. That's a historically black college and university, and then we're actually going on Monday. Corey will be going with me. And then we're also going to Howard University's Education Career Fair in Washington, D.C. Well, we're actually bring Harold Scott's coming with us and Marvin Wooten, who's an alumni. And so I think that will help our efforts as well with recruiting. We currently have a presence with Century College, Inver Hills Community College, University of Wisconsin River Falls, University of St. Thomas, the Minnesota Works, St. Paul Library, St. Paul College, and DCTC. So we partner with them with posting positions as well as some of their degree programs, and then doing some recruiting with them as well. Any questions on that priority statement before we move on?
Is this the first year?
Is this the first year you're going to these out-of-state fairs?
It is, yep.
Okay. And then do you have a goal for what you would like to recruit? Like a numerical goal, a numerical goal for what you would like to recruit?
We didn't establish a numeric goal. We obviously will take a look at positions we think will be available and highly recruit those positions, areas of special education and those areas. So priority statement 3, district will develop and implement a retention plan for all employees. So the Recruitment and Retention Committee has met 3 times with our primary focus preparing for recruitment at colleges and universities with diverse programs and populations and mentoring programs. So just as a background, the Recruitment and Retention Committee is a group made up of some community members, staff members in different areas that are all people of color that work within our district. Get feedback on where we should be recruiting, as well as they're great resources to recruiting candidates as well. So we met yesterday for the 3rd time and did our planning for our HBCU visits. Affinity groups for staff of color to all district employees, and I'm going to let Corey talk about that.
All right, I have our first date set for Tuesday, March 31st. To have our first affinity group. And I know in the strategic plan it says teachers, but we are changing it to staff of color to come together. So that'll be our initial meeting. And 1, just to come together, and 2, we'll be having a survey just to discuss different ways they would like to participate in helping to support our different staff of color within our district and help with retention. One of them we were talking about looking at is mentoring. If they want to get involved in some of our student groups that need support, so those different type of things. And our goal would be to have 2 more before the end of the year.
Is it all staff of color?
Yes, it is. It would be all staff of color.
So there's no, I would imagine that issues that are relevant to certain races aren't relevant to other races, right? Like, there are a lot of people of color who are, for example, anti-black, right? So are you looking toward the future at making those affinity groups smaller or more targeted?
I would say, well, with the number of staff of color we have in the district. The initial one was just going to be the big one. I would say you could do affinity groups within the affinity groups too, or even teachers of color too. I think once we get going, we'll kind of see where they lead us, because I don't think it should be where we're always feeding them stuff, but what do you need to be successful in our environment? But I do agree with that.
Okay, thank you. And then implementing a mentoring program for staff of color. Corey talked a little bit about it, but we're currently applying for a grant through MDE. It's called the Mentorship and Retention Grant. So the purpose of the grant is to provide new teachers of color with a seasoned mentor within our district that is a person of color. So the grant would provide opportunities for them to meet and to get together and be supportive of each other. The conversation at the Recruitment and Retention Committee meeting was about using some of those folks from the affinity group that are interested in mentoring others as a way to bridge that gap. So I believe the grant is due at the end of this month, and so we'll see if we're awarded the grant. We continue to look at Grow Your Own program grants as well through Minnesota Department of Ed, and also partnering with different schools. We've actually already met with University of St. Thomas and the University of Minnesota to talk about what those programs might look like and how we can target people. And so we did send out targeted messages to our staff who currently hold a bachelor's degree, who might be interested in getting a teaching license. And so we had great feedback of people who might be interested. Of course, we also, in that same survey, surveyed about what would be your barriers. And so families, time, and money are some of those barriers. So we're looking at ways that we can help bridge that too. And finally, the HR department will utilize data from exit interviews and engagement surveys to formulate measures to increase engagement and retention. And so we started using Qualtrics a couple of weeks ago to do our exit surveys, and so we've gotten a couple back. It's very nice. It's an automated service, so once the HR specialist puts in that someone is leaving, a notification a day later gets sent out, and then 3 days later, and then 3 days later. And so they can answer it on their phone or however they'd like. And so I think we have 15 so far. So I think that would be great data for us to have. Within Qualtrics, we can also just do spot surveys as well. So rather than waiting to do one survey in April every year, we can actually we can target who we want to send them to as well to gather some information on what our employees might need to feel successful. So I will take questions. Okay, thank you.
So then our next steps from here on, we'll continue our work gathering data and preparing to complete the school year. We'll have recommendations for the large strategic plan review committee in June. And the goal of that committee would be to present and through the data, convince the group that we have moved that priority statement forward to the point where we can retire it and then look for new ones. And if the committee doesn't, or if our community doesn't feel like we've reached that, then the feedback will be how do we continue on with the work in that priority statement or that action statement. And we'll be preparing for our last two years of the plan. I think the way this plan has gone, that renewal of the plan would be using the similar objectives. I feel like at this point in 4 years, we're really gaining traction in some areas and still have a lot of work, but it's the right two objectives, and so we're happy with our progress so far.
Thank you for that update, and obviously more to come. 8.0, information items. 8.1 is the long-range facilities planning update by our Director of Finance and Operations, Dan Payan.
Well, good evening. I'm here tonight to give you an update on our long-range facility planning that's been going on for quite a long time. And time is short, so I can't give you a story. I didn't really have a good story to say tonight anyway, so probably a good thing. I could tell you, my grandson Carter, his joke he told me the other day, he said, what did the buffalo say to his young boy when he dropped him off at school? Bye, son. Like that one. Okay, as you know, we have a long-range facility plan, and the reason we're working on this plan is because we have some big challenges. We want everybody to understand and know, and more people are finding out, and we want everybody to know what the issue really is. And the issue is that we're going to have tremendous growth over the next 10 years. Growth in the number of students we're going to have. We could have up to 3,500 potential new K-12 students in the next 10 years. We know that because we had a demographic study done last summer, in the spring and summer, and presented in the fall. And we know that this growth is due to housing and it's due to turnover rates. When we talk about turnover rates, what we're talking about is people moving into existing houses with younger families. And then, of course, the straight housing, you can just drive down the street pretty much anywhere between here and Woodbury and see all the new houses going up. Another big factor that pushes our growth more quickly than other districts is that we have a very high student generation rate of those households. Generally, in my years, we would consider a new house would produce a third of a student, meaning that I would need 3 new houses to produce another student in their system. Woodbury runs about 0.9. It's almost 1 per household. And Cottage Grove isn't that much further behind. Not quite sure why. Maybe it's just the stage of the life in which they're coming into the house. But new houses are generating students at a faster rate than most districts. Most of this growth that we're talking about is expected to occur at the secondary level. And you'll see later on as we talk about our plans, really what effect that has. And just general growth. Over the last 10 years, we've grown about 11%, meaning that we have about over 1% new increase in enrollment every year. That's just what I call a cohort survival rate. And for various reasons, we just keep increasing at just a normal rate. That's not even including having new housing. And you look at a district our size, 1% is 180, soon to be 190 students, soon to be 200 students. The other challenge we have as we look at our building plans is that we saw this coming back in 2015 and went to an election, and we didn't get all our questions to pass. Our first question we had that year in our election was to pass some operating levy dollars. Those are for operations, strictly operations of all the district plans we have. Went right into the general fund. The second question was to build a new middle school, convert the old middle school into an elementary school, and to improve the other middle schools. That one passed. But the third question that looked to expand the 3 high schools. And back then we said we want them all to be 2,300, which meant we were going to add 500 seats to Eastridge, add 300 seats to Woodbury High School, and 200 seats to Park High School. We also saw the needs in our older elementary schools that didn't have enough restrooms and other collaborative needs. So those were on the ballot too. Unfortunately, that one did not pass. The needs have not gone away. In fact, they've increased in the secondary level. We should be okay in the middle schools, but our high schools are going to be overcrowded. And like we said before, the little students still need to go to the bathroom. This is just a chart of our enrollment, just so you can visually see what the numbers look like. About 3,500 new students in the next 10 years. As we break it down to the different schools or set of schools, we see our elementary schools, actually we have enough existing capacity now to handle what we call our peak years. So our peak years, we're looking at 9,443 students, and we have room for 10,116 students. Unfortunately, not all the seats are in the right spot. And most of our growth is occurring in an area where we actually don't have an elementary school. We don't have an elementary school anywhere between Gray Cloud and Bailey. That's where all the growth is. So just to put it simply, we have enough seats in the elementary schools, but it's going to cause major moving of boundaries or major transportation issues if we don't put some schools closer to the students. And not every elementary school has experienced the same amount of growth. Pine Hill and Gray Cloud are expected to exceed capacity in less than 5 years. If you drive down around Pine Hill, you can see all the development. The Gray Cloud issue is coming from all the houses that are being built between 70th Street and Military. We also know that Bailey Elementary, Red Rock are going to be overcrowded. And that's the development that's all happening a little bit below Jerry's in Woodbury and a little further south below East Ridge. Those kids all go to either Bailey or Red Rock. And Woodbury Elementary's experienced a little bit of growth too, mainly because of what I talked about before, the turnover. We have some older neighborhoods there, but they're turning over with younger families. And as I said before, the 1960s, elementary schools built in the 1960s, not all the 1961s, but most of them were all built with just one set of restrooms, and they desperately need another set of restrooms. And we saw that back in 2015. If we don't add to these buildings that are going to be overcrowded, we would have to do substantial boundary changes. Just to review, at the middle school, we do have an issue that we have capacity for just under 5,100 and that we will probably have over 5,200 students. Just changing boundaries would not be enough to handle the expected growth. Cottage Grove Middle looks to have enough space and could help, but that would take some boundary changes. Altman Middle School, it was planned on having the capacity to add 300 students capacity to that building. And if we did that addition, it would be adequate for enrollment. People will say, why did you not build it big enough? Well, we ran into budget constraints back in 2017, and to keep things as economical for the taxpayers as we could, we built it with the idea that we could expand it later. And then the high schools. Right now, our capacity is about 6,100. We think in 10 years, we pretty much know in 10 years that we're going to have over 7,600 students. If we just went by the boundaries alone, it looks like East Ridge would have to have room for 2,900 students. Right now, they have capacity for 1,800. We also have just regular equitable needs at Park High School, Woodbury High School, and South Wash Alternative High School. We have curricular needs, we have cafeteria needs, we have gymnasium needs. We're seeing that the high schools are already getting overcrowded. And if we just change boundaries, that won't be enough, and you'll understand that more when you look at the high school plans. And it's coming faster than we thought, or than you might think, but by 21, 22, that each high school is expected to exceed 2,000 students. And just to give you a bearing, the capacity at East Ridge is about 1,800, 1,802, I guess. The capacity at Woodbury is about 2,000, and the capacity at Park is 2,100. So let's talk a little bit about the process, as now that you saw the numbers. Well, the purpose of this whole plan and the process is to achieve the best possible learning environment for students. That's why you see in the plans many things for modernization, collaborative spaces. And we have to ensure that we have enough classroom space at all grade levels and for early learning, pre-K, adult education, special education. And we want to design equitable learning spaces and consistent programming at all the schools. And then we want to determine facility modifications to existing school buildings to address changes in curriculum or advancement in personal learning methods. This is an easy visual of our process. The steering committee that is made up of mainly key district personnel, and there's some consultants that help us on there that sit on the side of the steering committee. Steering committee is going to gather all the input, but the steering committee is also going to push out plans and ideas to gather input on those. So there's a leadership team of a smaller group that facilitates the whole process and makes sure that the meetings are happening at the right time and when the meetings happen and what's going to happen at those meetings. There's a design team that consists of some district personnel, but also some consultants in the areas of engineering and architecture. They provide input to the leadership team and input to the steering committee in formulating the plans. The steering committee pushes out these ideas to the community task force, which is made up of district administrators and also about 30 community members. Steering committee will also facilitate and push out information for community meetings, which will happen later on in June, or May or June. And then recently, the steering committee has pushed out information to focus groups. And the focus groups were made up of, there was 3 nights of focus groups and some smaller meetings. And focus groups were made up of mainly district advisory committee members. And then we had a focus group of mainly just all district employees. And they were each union was represented by those in those groups. And then we also had some small focus groups with city leaders too, from various cities. Once again, that information that those people put together, that comes back to the steering committee for input. When the plans are finally decided, that we want to push those over to the superintendent and recommend to the superintendent that he recommends it to the school board. The school board will approve the final plan. So far, I think I covered most of the stuff in the last slide. We've looked at many, many options and narrowed down options and took them to the task force, got a lot of input, and they narrowed down some options. So we've come up with basically 2 plans that have 4 different options in them. We talked about the teams we've worked on, and we talked about the task force. And then we have gathered the input from the focus groups, but we will gather more input from community meetings. So here's the plans that everybody has seen so far, and that we're working on narrowing down even further or adjusting or modifying as we need to. The first, we've split these plans into 2 concepts, and you can see this information on our website. All the details of the plan are posted in the district website under the long-range facility planning process, and it would have all the details, and it's there for everybody to see. We divide our plans into basically 2 one-pagers. We have 2 elementary plans. We have elementary plans, and we have secondary plans. Just keep in mind, in the secondary plans, we also include the middle schools, the high schools, and then we also include any district needs we have. For instance, the district service center here, transportation, building and grounds, things like that. So the first elementary plan is called Renovations and Additions, and it involves repurposing 2 of the elementary schools we have. This plan accommodates growth through renovations and additions at school sites with the greatest limits on their space. And 2, like I said, 2 elementary school sites will be consolidated. In this plan, the capacity increases from 10,116 to 10,435. The total cost of this plan is $77 million. I wish it was 77,000. The other plan would involve repurposing 2 schools, but also would include building a new elementary school, putting a school closer to where the kids are living. And I guess ideally this new elementary school would be somewhere in the middle, somewhere close to the Cottage Grove Woodbury border, somewhere between Highway 19 and Radio Drive. We have looked at different sites, and we haven't got to the point where we've found out the viability of buying these sites, but the city of Cottage Grove and the city of Woodbury worked very closely with us and been very good at finding possible sites for schools. Renovations, additions would occur at the several other elementary schools. And once again, 2 of the sites, we don't know which sites they are yet, would be repurposed. This would increase our capacity to 10,480, and this plan was $85.8 million. With the 2 plans, we also have modernization in each of the plans to, and I don't have the sheets in front of me, the details, but to other schools that need modernization. Basically, as we talked earlier about the restrooms, adding the restrooms to those schools that only have one, and adding some gym space and some collaborative space. The same modernization will happen in either plan. So in these plans, it's either we have a price tag of either $158 million or $166 million. Secondary plans. So the middle schools and district sites apply to both the secondary plans as included in the costs. We'd have improvements and renovations at all the middle schools. Not super large renovations, but basically trying to get secured entrances at the ones that don't have it. The transportation building is too small. If we're going to have 3,000 more students, 3,500 more students, we'll probably need to have some more buses. The place doesn't hold enough buses the way it is. So we have to look at either creating a satellite transportation site, meaning that we'd have 2 sites, or finding one large site. In either case, we would probably move the Building and Grounds Department to share the space with transportation, and that would open up more room in this building so that we could move the TPC people down here and then decide what we want to do with the DPC. So the first plan is called Expansion for Balanced Growth, and these are the high schools. In this plan, the middle school capacity will increase to 5,382. High school capacity will increase to about 7,500. And the alt high school will increase from 120 to 300. Alt high school will go into one of the repurposed buildings or remain at the DPC with a larger footprint. This plan costs about $277.8 million. And this is a real philosophical thing for people to ponder. What size do you want your high schools? This plan would make each high school about 2,500 students capacity. As you know, right now we're over capacity, but we run about 2,000 per school. And it would involve adding on to all 3 schools, and there's some great work that they've come up with for Woodbury High School and for Park, and we have an idea where we put it at East Ridge. So the design team has done a great job, but that would involve making each high school much, much bigger. The other option for the secondaries, for the high schools, is to add a 4th high school. So once again, we get back to the philosophical discussion of how big do you want your high schools. This would give us 4 high schools at about 1,800. So they would actually have a little less than they have right now. Or maybe they would stay and this one would grow to 1,800. But they would generally keep our schools under 2,000 students. The other thing about this one, if we can figure out the configuration, but it allows for us to have a straight feeder system of the middle schools to high schools. So it's not like now there's some people that go to middle school and then they'll split off to different high schools. Well, obviously, because we have 4 middle schools and only 3 high schools. So this would allow the middle schools to feed right into the high schools. We will also do construction renovations at the alt high school, district service sites, and all the middle schools. This plan would probably see the least change at East Ridge because it's at the right capacity, and we still would make some structural changes at Park and Woodbury High School because they really need it, and we have some really issues with the cafeteria situation at Woodbury High School. It's just too small to handle as many students as we have. So those are the plans that we've been looking at, that we've narrowed down to, and we don't have any other answers as to which one you're going to use, how do they fit into each other, but we have an idea of what this stuff costs, we have an idea of what we need, what we could do, and it's just a matter of deciding, philosophically how we want to do the high schools, and ultimately it's the board's decision. Our timeline, in this month or last month, we gathered feedback, as I said, from advisory groups, staff, city officials. This month in March, we're going to be exploring our financing options. We've been looking at, what it costs, but how do we finance it? What kind of tax impact, things like that. I think we'll actually have our financial advisor speak at the task force meeting. And then in April, we're going to be working on doing a community survey so that you guys will have some good feedback and some good information on making your decision. As you remember, we've done surveys for all the referendums. May and/or June, we'll be having community meetings. And that's when we'll have the plans out there pretty far, and then people can give us their opinion on the plans, and everybody's welcome to come, and we'll try to stagger them so that for the best attendance. And then this one jumps all the way to December but technically we'll have to send in a review and comment the construction plan to MDE, and they have to approve it. Technically, you have to approve a ballot question in November. Once you do that, we can start our information campaign in December. And then the special election by law there's only 5 dates you can have an election for schools, and it's one of them the second Tuesday of February, and based on what it takes to plan to build a school, we felt it'd be best if we did it as early as we could in the year, because if it passes, we have more time to start designing the schools. So the special election will be on February 9th. And that's what we have tonight for an update. Take any questions or?
Dan,
I had a question. On the elementary boundaries, or on the elementary thing, you said that without having this approved, there will be like a substantial need for a boundary change. But there's going to be a need for a boundary change either way if you're consolidating a school and potentially building a new one. Is there a difference in the severity of a boundary change between the two plans?
Answer that one.
I would say the difference really lies in students from the northeastern part of our district needing to be transported to the southern end of our district. It's our smaller elementary schools on the southern side of the district that have those open seats. And so I would say that would be more dramatic in terms of boundary changes, because students and families will be asked to leave their community and come to, from Woodbury to Cottage Grove going back east or west.
No, is there a difference between the two plans in terms of how severe, if we build a new elementary school and we consolidate 2, then the students the shift in the current boundaries will be less dramatic than if we, what did I say, build a school?
Yeah, I would say that either way there are going to be boundary changes. I think from hearing from the task force members, it would be more of an impact to families if they need to be bused from the northern side of the district to the southern side. If the school is centrally located and new homes are going in there, one would anticipate their boundary may be shifted. Either way, I think with the elementary, there will be boundary changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say there'd be more kids involved in the shift all the way down, because it would be a domino type effect versus if we built a new elementary, and even in the consolidation, depending on the schools that are chosen.
So the renovation and addition one would have more of the domino effect. The new school would not? Or it would have some domino effect, but not as much?
And I thought your question was about if this didn't pass.
Oh, no. It's just to help understand which of these two are, does one of these options have a materially bigger impact on boundaries?
So the renovations and additions, the purpose of that option is really to add on where the growth is coming.
Okay.
But we would still have to repurpose 2 schools, which would cause students and families there to have boundary shifts. But the purpose of that renovations and additions really is to add on to the schools where we know there is growth coming. And so it may limit the boundary changes there, correct.
Okay. How is it only $8 million difference between renovating a bunch of schools and building a new school and renovating a bunch of schools?
Probably just because as old as the schools are, it's probably more costly to try to add on to them than just build brand new.
And we found that with Nuevas. Once we got into the remodeling, there was a lot of costs we didn't expect. And all said done, now we wouldn't have had the timing, but if we would have scraped and started again, there might have been lesser expense, but we would have been a couple years without the school. So, and Dan Hines can answer that question a little bit better. And it might be on FAQs, I'm not sure, but that might be one that we explain.
For the high schools, are there different educational outcomes associated with school size?
Kelly has done some research on that.
For elected.
Yeah, I'm gathering kind of research right now. You're going to find pros and cons on both sides. I think with the larger, and there's always that sweet spot, what's that number? And so with the larger schools, you have more of a comprehensive high school, more opportunities academically, potentially for students, but maybe less opportunities in extracurriculars because of the number of spots on teams and things like that. So I'm putting together kind of what I find in research, and so people can make their own conclusions. It's a very emotional, it's dependent upon the person and their experiences, I think, too, as well. So, but I will have that for the next task force meeting.
And it used to be that under 1,000, when I was a high school principal looking at this, it was, you were inefficient, you couldn't offer as many, you got into that 1,000, 1,200 to about 2,000 was a really good spot as far as a number of offerings kids could have, different options, along with having enough opportunities for extracurricular. Then you get over that amount in the larger 2,000 to 3,000. There's still a lot of course offerings, but as Kelly said, then you have the extracurricular issues. There's still a few kids that end up as the lead in the plays and things like that. And so it is really emotional. And I don't know if the research has changed. I think it does, as Dan said, it's a philosophical feel on what do we want to have as a district as far as the opportunities for kids.
All right, thank you for that update. Lots to think about, lots to read about, lots of opinions to get yet. Thank you. All right, 8.2 is our negotiations update, and that will be presented by our Human Resources Director, Kevin Witherspoon.
We'd like to provide an update regarding ongoing contract negotiations with the United Teachers of South Washington County Schools. First, a reminder of our community, since the district has received a couple of questions, UTSWC members continue to work under the 2017-19 contract and continue to receive pay as usual. Many teachers who qualified for what's known as step increases were moved up on the salary scale in July 2019. In December, union leaders agreed to a tentative 2-year agreement that would have provided flexible work days for teachers, increases to health care contributions, and salary increases in March and July of this year. The agreement included on average, an increase in total compensation of approximately $7,000 per teacher for the life of the contract. That's a 6.75% increase over the next 2 years. On Friday, February 21st, members of the district's negotiation team met with union leaders to respond to the union's latest proposal that included settling 2 contracts, one for the 2019-21 contract and another one for the 21-23 contract. The proposal included the wage and insurance increases that were part of the previous tentative agreement for the 1921 contract. It also included a wage increase of 2% for each year of the 2021-23 contract, along with increased health contributions. District administrators informed union leaders that the school board would agree to this proposal to settle both of those contracts depending on some clarification on health insurance increases. Union leaders then informed the district negotiators that it was not their official proposal and provided the district with a proposal including greater wage increases to the 2019-21 contract and the 21-23 contract. Since then, district negotiators and union leadership have continued to meet for a solution that values our teachers and allows the district to effectively manage its expenses and classroom resources. We remain committed to reaching an agreement as soon as possible. Tonight, the board will discuss the process and receive an update on proposals in a closed session. Thank you.
Thank you. 9.0 discussion items. We don't have any this evening. 10.0 action items, we have one. 10.1 is the approval of the resolution of intent to issue general obligation facilities maintenance bonds.
Good evening again. The district, along with planning to spend lots of money, we don't plan to spend it, but along with long-range planning, we also have to do our yearly things, and we have a program called long-term facility maintenance. And once a year, we have to submit to the Minnesota Department of Education a 10-year long-term facility maintenance plan, of which the board usually approves in July, and we submit it by July 31st. So looking at that plan, we have to look and say, how can we fund all these things? So we fund it with a combination of bonds, of state aid, depending on how the calculation comes out, and by what's called pay-as-you-go levy. So the state will figure out how we can balance those things. Once we see how much money we need, then every 2 years we go out and sell bonds to finance some of those things. So tonight we're just asking that we can pass a resolution of intent to issue the general obligation facility maintenance bonds. At the next board meeting that we have, Jody Zasba-Ellers will be here, and she'll bring the bond recap, and then we'll get permission to sell those, and then we'll sell them on the April 26th board meeting. So she'll bring all the purposes of all the bonds, I mean, how they're going to market them, what they think the interest rates will be, and things like that. So tonight, the first step is to pass this resolution. I thought, so I looked to see, because I don't know if everybody understands what long-term facility maintenance is, but it's an opportunity for districts to repair or replace things. You can't add with it, you can't add space with it, you can't even add air conditioning with it. If you don't have air conditioning, you can't add it. You can fix the fans, but you can't put dehumidification on there. So it's repair and replace, and we spend about $20 million a year. And just for an example, the things that will happen this year with these bonds and a little bit more, but this next year, starting July 1st, Cottage Grove Middle School will get a new roof, $3.4 million. They'll get a new boiler, chiller, $2.7 million. The new parking lot, $1.3 million. Gray Cloud gets a new parking lot, over $1 million. Lake Middle School gets a boiler. Exciting, huh? That's $1 million. Pine Hill gets a parking lot. Red Rock gets a parking lot. Hillside gets a roof. So these are not exciting things, but they have to be done. Woodbury High School is we'll get phase 2 done in the improvements to the auditorium. Now that one's a little happier thing. That's about $1 million. And then Woodbury Middle School gets a new roof. So these are the kind of things we do with this. It's not glamorous, but we have to do them. We also feel that $20 million we spend a year, that in some of these plans, Dan Hines has figured out what we can reduce in this plan because we'll have new buildings and we can do some of these improvements in the bonds. With that, though, I'll just ask if you would pass this resolution, and then we'll come back next board meeting and explain how the bonds will work.
All right, so first we need a motion to approve the resolution for our intent to sell these bonds.
So moved.
Holy cow. So I think it was moved by Pat, right? Okay, and second by Katie? Okay, so I think, is it a roll call we need for the resolution?
Melinda Doles?
Yeah.
Louise Hines?
Yes.
Simi Pitney?
Yes.
Pat Driscoll?
Yes.
Sharon Van Leer?
Yes.
Katie Schwartz?
Yes.
Tracy Brunette?
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
All right, 11.0 are reports and comments. 11.1 is our superintendent's report.
Thanks. I'm happy this evening to share great news about our 2019 graduation rate release that was released today. The four-year graduation rate for the South Washington County Schools as a whole increased to 93.3% of the students who graduate on time. The 2019 graduation rate is now up 1.2 percentage points higher than 2018. This really points to the hard work and commitment of our students and teachers as they move toward graduation and recognizing that you will still need a high school diploma. But we as a district also have changed our mindset to help kids realize that college is not the only post-secondary option. We have talked to our community businesses and moving kids into the world of work also, depending on what they want to do in the military, on different careers. As we dig into the data, graduation rates for our Black and Hispanic students, and these are the categories identified by MDE, those terms. Those students increased at each of our comprehensive high schools. Our comprehensive ones, high schools Eastridge, Park, and Woodbury, and then our alternative high school is up there as well. For the second consecutive year, 100% of Black students attending Eastridge High School graduated within 4 years, and Park High School also saw 100% graduation rate for their Hispanic and EL learners. We saw Eastridge Park and South Washington alternative high schools increase graduation rates, and Woodbury held steady. The graduation rate for EL students increased 5.6% from 2018 to 2019. And the graduation rate for students who qualify for free and reduced price lunch increased by 2.4% district-wide. With that said, we can always improve, and we'll be reviewing the data more closely to see what additional interventions will take place. The Department of Education Commissioner Mary Catherine Ricker contacted me yesterday, and she shared that our district was one of the bright spots in the state data. Teachers have been hard at work implementing culturally responsive teaching in our classrooms. Credit recovery has been an instrumental tool in helping kids catch up for graduation, and programs like AVID continue to propel students to be ready for life after high school. As we think about, and Commissioner Ricker asked me what's been happening in our district because we've had great trend data. And I think there's a combination as we look. It's not one thing that we can point to. I really feel our strategic plan after the 4th year with our culturally responsive teaching, the work on personalizing for kids and knowing them so we know them as they come in to modify our instruction, to modify our assessments, and modify our interventions is a big part. The AVID program with the AVID strategies infused throughout our system. Our alternative high school, if you look at their graduation rate individually, that's up there 51%. But if you think about an alternative high school, kids will come into the alternative high school after their freshman, sophomore, junior years, and they may have 2 credits toward graduation because of a variety of reasons. Not that they are not capable, but life gets in the way for a lot of our kids and families. And so to have the alternative high school move at least half of the kids to graduation within 4 years, because to understand the rate, you only can count kids when they start the first day of their freshman year and when they ended their 4th year as a senior. Now, many kids, if they end up in the hospital or for whatever reason, family issues, they may have to come back for just a few weeks in the summer and graduate, but they're not considered in this graduation rate. Also, I'm very proud of our system where we'll bring all kids back for a 5th year if they need that, or a 6th year. And then even after that, our adult diploma center, people of all ages can come back and receive a real diploma from us, not a GED. So as you look at these rates, the individual rates, Woodbury High School at 96%, Park at 93%, and Eastridge at 97%, and then 51% giving us that overall rate. It's important to also understand the difference between 93 and 100 are not 7% of kids dropping out. It's kids that just didn't finish in the 4 years. We do have less than 0.5% that, as we look at, we're not tracking where they are. They might have not re-enrolled, so they're considered dropouts at that time. But we see a lot of kids then come back. And I'm really pleased with our results as you go forward, because as you know the data, if kids do not have a high school diploma, their chances of being successful out in the world today is significantly reduced, along with their chances of being involved in the legal system goes way up, because there just isn't a way to make a real living and try to move forward in life. So these are really exciting results, and I credit all of the hard work of people throughout the system, including our bus drivers who work so hard when they pick kids up to start their day off on a positive note. The culture and climate that they set helps kids come into school ready to learn. Our food service people, our paraprofessionals that are always there to help, and a lot of times are the first person that maybe kids might confide in when they're working with them on interventions on difficult issues. So this is definitely an all-district effort to get to this level, and we're really excited about our results. I know John may have some more specifics, or as we delve into this, if you have any other specific questions, we'll spend more time with this as we go forward.
Thank you.
One other thing I just noticed, tell people, we've had a lot of calls and concerns about the coronavirus and what does that mean for us. We are following the guidelines that MDE and the Department of Health have given to us. We had a conference call yesterday. We're doing a lot of planning and contingency planning to be prepared. And right now, our guidance, and Pepe Barton has put some things on the website, is that there's no cancellations that they're recommending. We are following the hygiene the hygiene recommendations, talking to our kids about washing their hands and things. We'll have more updates as we move forward. I hope we will not have to move into any type of contingency plan, but I think we are well poised to do that with our online options for kids, Schoology, and different things that teachers have prepared, or that they have prepared in case we'd have to close, which I don't anticipate. So I just want people to know that we're well aware of the concerns and some of the things that they're hearing, and we're on top of what the guidance is from the Department of Ed and the Department of Health.
Do you see any upcoming student trips being canceled?
Great question. We have a lot of domestic trips that'll go out in the spring. We have orchestra and band going to California and different schools. Then we have some international trips in the summer. Right now, we're not looking at changing any of those schedules based, again, on the recommendation and the guidance that we're given, but we're monitoring that closely. Our international trips, there's a couple, 4 to 6 weeks before we'd have to make a decision on some of those, so we can see how things progress throughout the country and and in countries around the world, and what the United States says about travel restrictions. But right now, everything is moving forward in the same way. Certainly parents that'll be something that sponsors will look at if parents choose to say, I'm not sure I want to send my child, even though it's safe, we're just going to stay at home. Then we'd make decisions based on attendance if we made any changes, but right now we're not. But yeah, that's a great question. In fact, Mike pulled all of our trips, out-of-state trips and international trips now to take a look at how many are going out. And there are a lot of them I'd like to go with the kids. There's some good trips coming. So hopefully we can continue and give the kids a good experience.
All right, thank you. All right, 11.2, school board member report. So we'll start with Melinda.
Okay, so I met with the administration of 3 of the schools that I'm assigned with. So I met with Jim Smokovich at East Ridge and got a tour and walked around and met all the administration. I also got to see a Link Crew video that Keith starred in as a drooling high schooler. It's pretty funny. And then I met with Nikki Locke at Next Steps. So she's the new director there. I really had known Nancy Myers well from having a child that attended Next Step for a few years, so it was nice to meet the new director. We discussed her plans that she wanted to implement between the Next Step program and then the work program that they have over at the Valley Creek Mall, and talked about some updates on the website that she wants to do. And I got invited to their commencement ceremony. I believe it's May 28th. And then I met with Arthur Williams at Middleton Elementary, and I had never met him before. He's a really nice guy. I also walked around and met with some teachers, talked to some teachers, observed some classrooms. The highlight was really observing this music class, and Molly's music class, and watching the kids play the ukulele and just see the pride that they had in that. And I talked to some teachers about concerns and, just anything that they would want school board to know. Common theme, of course, was getting the contract settled, but then a lot of stuff on workload and needing more mental health help in the schools. Let's see, I was a guest reader at Hillside, which was really fun. The kids just so much fun, asked such great questions, and just were really engaged. Let's see, I also attended my first youth advisory committee, and I know that Kelly talked a little bit about that too, but really good mix of high school kids from all the different schools that were really involved and had some really good insight for that program. So it was neat to see what's going on with that. And I attended a long-range facility planning meeting and got to hear the 4 plans. And so it'll be interesting to see what's chosen among there and how we're going to proceed with that. And then finally, I got to go to the Washco Cares, what was it called? The Leap into the Legacy fundraiser that just happened this past Saturday night. And that was it was a really great experience to engage with people and get to know people outside of, this school board type of membership. And it's just so, she did such a great job with it, Cheryl did, and to know that we raised over $20,000 for children in need is just remarkable, so.
Thanks. Sammy?
So I also visited all 4 of the schools that I am assigned to. I went to the Access program and learned more about the program. Susie Evans is like a force of nature. And so she has done really great things setting up that program. I learned a lot about credit recovery. I learned a lot about the GED program and the adult language learner program. And then I got to go and sit in on conversation with our English language learner adults. And so I learned how to say hello and thank you in a bunch of different languages, none of which I can remember except for Spanish, which I knew before the meeting. And it was just really interesting to talk to these students about, some of them have been in the US for 2 months, and some have been in the US for several years, and just to hear the level of English proficiency and just to see how excited they were to be able to be in conversation with, the 2 volunteers who are running the classes were, really dedicated to helping bring out what these students knew. I did also get invited to their end of year celebration. I'm not gonna lie, I actually invited myself because it's a potluck where students bring food and I'm super good at eating. I went to Hillside where I was a guest reader and they had a pretty comprehensive guest reader program. I read to 4 classes. TC the Bear, I believe is his name, from the Twins was also there. Not the day that I was there because I would not have been much of a celebrity compared to him, I'm assuming. But it was a really wonderful opportunity. The students, yes, they asked really great questions. I'm apparently 79 years old. When I told the students how old I actually was, one of them gasped and said, "You're older than my dad." And great, I felt really good. But it was a really wonderful opportunity, and I have to thank Anita, the reading specialist there, for setting that up. It was so much fun. I got to talk to a lot of different staff members, paras, teachers, and Erin, the principal, about things that they wish the school board knew. I actually didn't get a lot of compensation or contract discussion. I got a lot of just workload or class size kind of, or things they wanted me to know about the student population at Hillside and why it's unique and special. Why it's a unique and special school, I should say. I also went to Nuevas Fronteras and did kind of the same thing, spent a lot of time in classrooms, got to know, met some paras and lunch staff, met a lot of teachers, and there I learned a lot about the new literacy curriculum that they have. It's the 2nd year of their new literacy curriculum, and the gains they are seeing in both English and Spanish reading in the curriculum. Anecdotally, my own child went from being a reluctant reader to a less reluctant reader over his 1 year with the program at Nuevas, but I didn't know how widespread that was, and apparently it's really widespread. It's making great changes, and I think the staff there seems to be really committed and really interested in making sure students are successful with it. And Hillside, Nuevas, Access. Oh, Newport. So I went to Newport Elementary, and I was also a guest reader in 2 classes. There I got a group hug from the kindergartners. They were really, it was 20 children piled on top of me. It was awesome. And I also got to go to their all-school meeting and hand out pencils to the student of the month. There are 12 students of the month each month, and February they were awarded based on how well they did living the value of compassion. For March, the
value they are working on is perseverance, which is, honestly, the video was really great. It was very helpful for me in my mindset at that time. And then also, in February last month, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, but for the general audience, Principal Rich Romano testified at the state senate about Newport being a beat the odds school and how they are doing much better than you would expect statistically based on the income level of the students in the school, and how, so he walked me through kind of how they have a really focused literacy program at Newport, and have really focused on kind of scaffolding from grade to grade and really integrating all of the different concepts that they're working on with literacy and with math to help get those students to be more successful. And it was really wonderful to see that and to hear that he had been recognized at the state level, being able to testify in front of the state senate education E12 committee. And so I don't know if there's video available of his testimony, but I think it would be really great. Sure, there is. Yeah, I think it would be really great if we could just feature that, because it just seems like such a cool thing that, you know, more people should know how great they are doing. And so that's it. Oh, and I also was at the gala, which was awesome.
That Hillside Elementary that you went to, where they said you were 79?
Yes.
I'm not going there. They might say, I'm 105. So, I love hearing these stories because it reminds me of my days as a principal, and I went to a kindergarten class. I'd go visit all the classrooms every year, and I asked them what they thought the principal did, and they said, you sharpen pencils? So I thought, oh, if that's my only job, that would be really overpaid. So I just wanted to share with the board that there's a symposium happening tomorrow, the symposium with the legislators, and the topic is the opportunity gap. And I tried to find information on when, you know, it's going to be aired, but there's nothing out there. It says more information later, and it's tomorrow. So, but I know that one of the things is going to be Alan Page and Kashkari are going to be talking about their proposal to change the Constitution and to make it legal to. I don't know the exact wording, but anyway, there's something you can do. You can, if you can find it on the internet, you can watch it and you can get an agenda and look at different topics. I've been watching AMSD because they said they put it out there. It's still not there, so I'm trying to figure that out. I have one meeting tomorrow with AMSD, and I had one last week as the executive board. So that's what I've been up to.
Thanks. Okay.
So yesterday I was at the 916 meeting, and it was one of my favorite ones where the kids from the Career and Tech Center come and talk to us. And there happened to be a gentleman that was one of the speakers that is from Eastridge, and he is in the automotive mechanical, I can't remember the next word, but it is with the auto tech, and he shared some of the experiences he had. There was another gentleman from a different district that works in the diesel engines, and he actually already has a job as a tech when he's still in high school doing this, and will be able to then go on. Maybe, he said, he wasn't quite sure what he wants to do. And then there was a young lady that is in the EMT program. She wanted the nursing program. She didn't get in, so they're like, well, try EMT. And she said it was the best error that's ever happened to her, because she is really enjoying it. She told a story about an accident that happened on, it was in Maplewood, and she had to help when they were extracting a woman from a vehicle. She was talking from the passenger side of the car where they were trying to cut her out, keeping her calm. They got her in the ambulance, and they asked her to cut the hands off of her so that they could help, and there was a gash on her leg, and she was able to actually step in and help quickly do that. And she said she was just amazed at how much they let these students do. And I think she's been in the program for just over a year, just how much she's been able to learn and do. And I think the numbers, we have 222 or 223 or something kids in these programs. And that's all kids that could graduate high school and have a associate's degree or something in the technologies or mechanics. They have a path. And sometimes a four-year college doesn't work for everybody, and these kids will have a trade or have something that they can step into. And the one gentleman, the diesel, said that after, I thought he said 5 years or a few years, he could make $40 an hour doing this diesel mechanics. So these programs are really helping our kids. And, sometimes a four-year degree isn't in the works or the cards for everybody, but we're helping them get into the trades, and there's a big need for that right now. So these are great programs, and it was great to hear these kids talk about it.
Well, thank you. Louise?
Yes, I also enjoyed the South Washington Cares, the Leap Into Legacy. So I'm thanking Melinda and Simi for adopting me, letting me join their group. Yesterday, Dan and Pepe and I and the school communicators met with Steve Sandell, Susan Kent, and Kate Bingham to reinforce our legislative priorities. I got a chance to be at East Ridge on February 14th and sit in on their professional development. The keynote speaker was Erin Walsh, who did iBrain Learning in a Digital Age, which was absolutely fascinating. And then I was particularly excited to see the alternative high school students did a presentation on the alternative high school, a place where connections are made. And that included some of their super seniors as they discussed themselves, so fifth-year seniors. So they had that connection, and then to go into that school and see it play out when I'm visiting as well was phenomenal. When I was there, I started in the math class because I wanted my foundation, but that was great. I had a chance to stop over at Oltman. I think their Raider rallies are great. Tomorrow's will focus on leadership. They also are getting ready for their spring play, the musical Xanadu. Take a look at the costumes. That was my first experience dyeing clothing since tie-dye days in the 70s. It was great. I stopped at Crestview today. It was Dunker Day in the cafeteria, so it was pretty exciting for all the students. I had to stop in on Gray Cloud as well, and on their recent PDA Day on Tuesday. They were very excited. They had a transgender presentation in the morning that they said was just phenomenal. I've had some fun being back in the classroom. I was a reader at Hillside as well, and I do some junior achievement for Cottage Grove Elementary, so that was great. I had a chance to see the Woodbury High School Orchestra in concert, so it's always a game I play, look at the names and see if I can recognize my former students because they look very different. So it's been a busy month. It's been really fun.
Thank you. Sharon?
Let's see, what did I do? I went to spend some time at Park with Todd Herber. We've been friends for over 20 years, and it was good to have him back. And then I was a guest speaker at the Applaud Award Breakfast, and there were 10 students who received awards, and I think it was 4. Do I have to start all over again? No, thank you. All right, I'm back in business. All right. So anyway, there were 10 students who received awards for their achievement, and teachers were able to give nice gift bags to the students, and they really appreciated it. And then there were 14 business sponsors for the event. And I want to give a shout out to Lynn Diamond, who organizes this every year, who is a phenomenal person. So thanks, Lynn. And I'll be back again next year.
Thank you. All right. I attended the gala as well on Saturday, and then the foundation meeting on Monday to hear the good news about how much they were able to raise, which is phenomenal. And look for more good things with Schoolie this summer, and they just do such wonderful work. So thanks to our board, or the people who are, I guess, we're asking to be on the board, and Cheryl for her amazing work. And then this morning attended the last elementary youth advisory committee. Got our picture here of our awesome kids. And they love having you in the building, Dr. Jacobus. They were super excited about knowing the superintendent and certain things about you that we wouldn't want to talk about, like you're a Packer fan. But anyway, they did mention they loved seeing you in the schools. So, and thanks to all of our 17 kids who were amazing today. Like Julie said, we got to test out the new menu items and give our opinions. Well, I didn't give my opinions, but it was fun to hear what the kids had to say. So, all right. So 12.0, future meeting dates. 12.1, Thursday, March 26th is a regular board meeting, and oh goodness sakes, my eyes are getting tired. April 9th is a regular meeting date. 13.0, we are going to go into closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03 for labor negotiation. So I will entertain a motion to go to closed session.
So moved. Second.
It's moved by Sharon, second by Katie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We will not be voting when we come back.